Thank you guys so much for having me. I've been kind of in hiatus for a while. I started a new job 6 months ago at Salesforce, which has been really awesome. And this is a big part of what I've been focused on there. Some background, Salesforce is about 15 years old. There's about 15,000 developers and counting, up 16. And half of those are within engineering, so very big company. We have little, like, kind of sub-companies called clouds that are, I guess, maybe around 15 to 20 of those that exist. And I work within a cloud called Salesforce One, which is all things related to mobile development and testing. And each cloud has like somewhere between maybe 30 to 50 Scrum teams. We practice Agile very well, in my opinion. And each Scrum team is maybe like 5 to 10 people. So, team structure. One of the big things that, the challenges that have sort of come up at Salesforce has been, how do we structure the team so that we get, the best software development process and, staffing in place. And I think everyone's pretty familiar with the, pattern that exists in the industry. Microsoft is pretty well known for the trio of, one manual tester, one SDET, one developer. Google is infamous for, their developer is completely responsible for writing all of the unit and API tests and basically owning the quality, and there maybe are other specialists in other departments doing kind of high-level end-to-end automation, but ultimately if something breaks in production, it's the developer's responsibility. And Salesforce is kind of divided right now. Well, not divided. Most of the teams are still kind of following this traditional model where there's like a team that's comprised of two parts, developers and quality engineers. And the quality engineers are mostly focused on like SDET activity. They're doing automation most of the time. They're doing some manual testing, some test planning, but mostly SDET work. And there's this new model kind of emerging that they're calling the hybrid model, which is essentially a team of generalists who can support the product in all the ways that it needs to be supported, and who are like willing and happy to do that. So people that do product development, do product architecture and design, but also do unit testing, test-driven development, API level testing, automation with Selenium, WebDriver, and manual testing. And they know how to build the product. They know how to test it for security holes. They know how to do performance testing. So there's not this sense of like, I just can only handle one aspect of what it takes to write reliable software. And so that's really the team that we've been putting together. So there's a bunch of metrics that people use. Most of these metrics, I think, are pretty much irrelevant, but these are the things that I think, conventionally are asked, like, is the team successful, or not? Number of features delivered. This is something that, this is a clear value actually at Salesforce. Like, we care about our features and that we're delivering them. And if we're not delivering features, this is a problem. But then other things like, people look at lines of product code, lines of test code, number of bugs logged, number of customer cases. This is probably familiar to you guys as far as like, the spectrum. One thing that's come up recently that I think actually has a lot more, sorry, I'm turning my phone off right now. A lot more significance about, how the team is doing if they're delivering high quality software is how long it takes to find a blocking bug. And by blocking, I mean like anything that requires like a restart or a reinstallation of the application. If it takes you less than 5 minutes to find one of those bugs, that's a pretty good indicator, I think. But also like time to respond to business needs, and I think the number of people who've departed is a really good metric to look at. The issue though, when you're trying to measure the success of a team with these metrics is, as soon as people understand that there's a metric that you care about, they can start manipulating it, and they do usually. They're engineers, they're smart people, they know how to do this. So it really doesn't have, long to live, so to speak, as a genuine value. And then the other issue is that these are just like snapshots in time. Metrics are just, some numbers that, like, there are lots of influences that are happening totally outside the scope of how the team is set up or the process that you're using that will influence these. And so they just, it's just like one moment, and that's really not kind of the end-all be-all. And then the third thing is, I think, that's sort of dangerous when you start like looking at metrics is people try to like impose business values on you or on others with metrics, and that never works, right? Because people know what the real business value is. They understand like what is the priority at your company. Like everyone knows what that is, right? It's what determines like what gets, done first and done last, and who stays and who goes, and everyone knows like. Oops, something's going on. Is there background? Did someone join? Hey, David. Hey, Sam. Okay. I'm going to mute you guys. Yeah, cool. I'm going to mute you guys, though. Do you mind?
Until after I'm
Until after I'm done, yeah. Okay. So, like, those are the sincere values of the business, and if you try to like impose metrics to try and like change those values, people will just find ways of working around it, and I've seen that happen before, recently. So in my opinion, the real measurement of like if a team is successful or not is really largely around these kind of three things. So the first thing that I think is most important is, the job satisfaction. The team is happy, people are sincerely glad to be working where they're working, they feel they're doing, meaningful work, and they're glad to be there. I think another big thing that's really in line with Agile principles is, the majority of the work that you do is with new feature development, and the minority of the work that you do is with maintaining old features. If that's inverse, and mostly what you're doing is maintenance and updates, typically that means that there's like a problem with the team or, the organization. And then I think having a consistent processing time for planned and unplanned needs, so just essentially the consistent velocity that Agile is, focused on helping people achieve is really a good metric. So what we wanted to do as we were putting together and building this hybrid team out of this old traditional team was essentially, address the concern that, we would be taking testing specialists out and replacing them with software generalists. And so how would we basically fill the gaps and make sure that that was covered? And what we really wanted to do was, instead of trying to test quality in at the end of the software development lifecycle, we wanted to build quality in from the beginning, which is really in line again with the Agile principles of test-driven development, pair programming, and trying to kind of do quality work to begin with. If you try to, so testing is excellent for telling you like how stable a product is. It will tell you that, like, it's information, it will give you that information, but it won't fix the bugs for you. And it's usually more expensive and much harder to kind of build that quality in later once you've found the bugs versus if you just never write the bugs to begin with. It's a major Agile principle. And so that's really what we wanted to do. So we do Agile sprint planning, backlog grooming, spiking and scoping. We have 2-week sprints, daily stand-ups. We really have a heavy focus on automation. We do lots of unit testing and API level testing and some end-to-end testing. Another thing that we've done to address kind of this need for having testing be part of the day-to-day activity is having a primary and a secondary engineer for each work item in the sprint. So everyone in the team does some primary work and some secondary work, and they pair with different people. And each item basically gets the same kind of treatment, but it doesn't have like a designated person that's only doing that role. So the primary engineer writes the product code and the unit tests, and the secondary engineer writes the end-to-end test if needed, does the code review, and does manual testing if needed. And that's been working out really well for us. We also are practicing this new, or I don't know if it's new, but something that we recently learned about called the 10-minute test plan, which came out of Google. I think James Whitaker first introduced it. And we do that after every sprint. So basically we sit down, and it's 10 minutes, but really it's like an hour. But you sit down and you basically, like, you try to compress the test plan and the testing into the most critical things. So you're like, okay, these are the features we worked on. What are the attributes, components, and capabilities? So like the verbs, the nouns, and the more verbs, or the adjectives and adverbs, the nouns, and the verbs, and we just kind of compose a matrix, like a simple matrix of like, this feature has to be fast, and it has to, be correct. And the correct is that, this equation works. And, how do we test that? And it's just highly compressed, but it gets us, like, it sort of gets us to like 80% of the value with like, 20% of the cost versus trying to get 100% of the value and then paying so much more for that, like, last final, percentage. So I highly recommend that to anyone who wants to do kind of quick, effective testing. And then
this is done at the end of the sprint or the beginning of the sprint?
At the end of the sprint, yeah.
Why are we doing it at the end, not the beginning?
That's a good question. We probably should think about moving it to the beginning. We've had a little bit of like turmoil as far as what we're working on, so yeah, I think we have been doing it at the end because we know what's been done at that point. But yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, doing it beforehand. We also test on emulators and real devices, and this is something that we have to do kind of religiously until we get our automation and tooling up to snuff, so to speak. Once that's running, I think we can kind of lay off of this, but for now, everyone's expected to integrate, like, using the product on real devices as soon as their feature is, ready to load, so to speak.
And that's part of the generalist responsibility?
Yes. Everyone's expected to use their phones.
Just their phones only, or just, do you have a lab or anything that you can get other phones from?
That's a good, yeah, so people have good representation of devices for themselves, and we also have a lab. Finding the right balance has been challenging, for sure. So this is what we did to kind of transition. So the issue is, like, if you're at a team or if you're at a company and you're like in this traditional model and you want to try and move to the hybrid model, like, it can be very challenging because you'll come across a lot of fear and loathing for like change, and people are worried and they don't, they're not ready to do something new. So a thing that I found works really well is as soon as there's like a real problem, that's when you can kind of swoop in and be like, okay, now let's try this solution that otherwise no one would ever be willing to try, but since we have this serious problem, they're willing to try it because maybe it will help. So that's a really good way in. And then for me, kind of getting everyone on board, willing to kind of, try it out, was just a lot of talking to people, meetings, one-on-one, meetings in groups, and listening to concerns and addressing them, and basically just listening really well. That was one thing that has helped me a lot at Salesforce is they offer a lot of training for their employees, which is amazing. And they have internal and external training, and one of the management training courses I went to was incredible because they were like, just stop talking and just listen, like just stop for like a week. And that was great advice for me. That's really changed my like effectiveness at work. It's just listening to people more, asking questions. But the concerns that come up are like, what if we stop testing, and of course, we're not going to, the response is, we're not going to stop testing, we're going to be testing all the time. Another concern is, what if we miss something that a traditional team with like a focused expert would have caught? That was a valid concern. And so what we did was we actually went and interviewed like all of the kind of highly regarded experts and got like a list of, these are the tools, these are the processes, these are the things available. And so we had that information like in our toolbox to use. That was how we kind of partially addressed that. What if engineers get upset and leave? So no one was forced into this. Everyone was like, gently brought on board. We'll try it and see how it goes. And then what if we offend people for, threatening like some political structure of, power or whatever, the old way. So basically it's like money talks, right? So if we can build a team that's really successful and delivers, at a high quality and, constant velocity of features, that people are going to understand that, and that's going to matter. And that's really what we're focused on. We're not focused on, kind of usurping old paradigms, or we just want to help the business. So that's kind of the way you can address that concern. Hire great engineers. A really good way of doing this is, hire based on skill, not on experience. I see a lot of people come by that have, a lot of experience that can't code their way out of a paper bag. I see a lot of people who are excellent engineers who just don't have that background. And I'll talk to anyone, I don't care. And we found a lot of great people that way, just by not being snobby about, oh, this person doesn't have an Ivy League degree, or they don't have 10 years of, development experience. I think that's pretty well accepted though at this point. And then just iterating on the process, improving, having retrospectives, doing the agile, constant improvement thing. And of course, staying positive. This has been a big one for me in this process. So a lot of software development and testing is like emotionally charged. Like there's a lot of negative energy. People are very stressed out. They feel guilty. They're blaming. Like there's a lot of, just negative like emotions that come up. And it's really good to stay positive and just, be sincere. Focus on what's going well. Praise people. Set really high goals that are unreasonable. And then the things that are like, the setbacks that you get don't matter that much because you're already going towards something that's so much bigger that you can those things don't even matter anymore. That's been a good one for me. And then the other thing is just believe that you've already succeeded and then just work from there. So start your day off like, we've already been wildly successful, this has already been great, and just go from there. That having those kinds of attitudes and, kind of coming from that place has really helped a lot. Because, again, you can get sucked into this like emotional vortex of negativity when you're dealing with testing and bugs and high stress like that. So I was really debating whether or not I should put this slide up. I talked to a few people who were like, do not share data, like this is inappropriate. So I actually took a bunch of the numbers out and I just included like some very general things, and I actually don't even know what this data means personally. Maybe you guys have an opinion, but like it could sort of be interpreted in many different ways. So here's the Salesforce has 4 major release cycles each year that last for 3 months each, and we are in the middle of this release cycle right now. We just finished this one. This was the one before, and this was the one before that. And so this is the team basically before I joined as the traditional model. This is the team sort of in transition, and this is the team now as hybrid. And we're still actually in active development, so these numbers are totally subject to change, and I'm sure they will be. But I mean, you could kind of, so like ratio of debt work. So this is essentially like test failures, bug fixes, refactoring, performance issues, etc. So this is the ratio of the entire product group, which is like 40, 50 Scrum teams versus our team. So we contributed, for that kind of work, we contributed 0.061% in this release cycle. That seemed to have gone down as we transitioned, and it's gone down a little bit. This is the ratio of user stories, again, like of the entire product teams compared to our team. So we contributed 1.59% of all the user stories done in the traditional model, and that actually went down significantly as we were transitioning, and then has sort of stayed the same here. ratio of bugs, again, entire product to our team. So we had 0.68% of bugs that we contributed as a traditional. This went down to 0.3%, and then it went down really drastically to 0.04%. So I don't know, maybe that means something, maybe not, who knows. User stories to bugs. So this is an interesting one. So for every user story that we completed, we introduced 2 bugs in the traditional model. This I might get in trouble for. I might have to edit this later. Then as we were transitioning, it got better, and this is product-wide. This is not just our team, this is the entire team. It got a little bit better, and now it's actually gotten a lot better, but again, we're still doing development, so who knows, that might get worse again. But it dropped by 100%. But then for our team, this is sort of interesting. Like we were about 1-to-1. So we wrote, for every feature we wrote, we introduced 1 bug. That stayed about the same, but now we're way, way down. So it seems like the trend, which could be wrong and might be influenced by other things and definitely change, is that we're writing less features, but the features we're writing are higher quality. And that's pretty much where we want to be, right? So we want to be, I mean, if we have to pick, right? We want to be doing most of our new development work in a way that is much more maintainable and sustainable and doesn't require lots of maintenance and, bug fixing and stuff, production issues. So, and then I have some anecdotal stories which I think are also not relevant, but are sort of nice to talk about as far as just anecdotally. It seems like things are working out pretty well. So we had everyone got hit by a bus situation. Seriously, we had 1 engineer left.
I was on the team for 1 week, right? Your team was like that too, right?
Yeah.
Your other team.
So this team was someone was out on fraternity, someone was out on bereavement, someone's house caught on fire, someone else was on vacation. So we literally had 1 to 2 engineers still working, and we had 8 P0s coming in from production. It was a huge disaster. And it was all hands on deck, everyone stopped working, just focused on the production P0 issues. And we were actually still able to handle it. We were triaging, debugging, fixing, and diving into code that we hadn't worked with before that much. And we were really recognized as being one of the leading teams to really solve the problem that needed to be solved, that was unplanned. And I don't think we would have done that as much if we had not been set up that way with generalists who could sort of address anything that came through.
And wasn't that the case of the people that were left were actually the traditional QE people versus the developers?
Yeah, the only people that we had in the team that were still alive, basically, were people reporting to me or technically in the QA org still. There's some challenges at Salesforce because there's a lot of built-in kind of supporting structure for the division, which I'm working through that as well. But they technically are QA people, but they were the developers that basically solved the issue that Mark Benioff was flipping out about. So it was pretty amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That does seem like a really good benefit of having this generalist, right? Because you don't have to worry about people who are specialized in one area if they're gone.
That's right. And then also just, people who understand the product, understand the testing,
Yeah.
that can inform how they do both, so much better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the big question we still have is around manual testing. It's something that we still have to do. We don't want to do it so much. We want to focus on automation, but we really still have to do it because of the mobile situation. Until we have, again, automation, set up to really work with mobile devices, we still have to do manual testing. So we have a team of specialists who just focus on manual testing, and they're really good at receiving a test plan, walking through, what needs to be done, filing bugs that come up, and just getting the work done. God bless them. And then we also do testing within our team, as I mentioned, every day we do some testing, every sprint we do more testing. But I found that like the really valuable tests are the ones like our executives sit down in a room and test for 5 minutes, and they find like the most valuable bugs, you know, the highest priority, like within, you know, 5 minutes. And we just never come close to that. And so how do we make our testers like more like our executive users, more like our realistic users? So there's some interesting ideas around like persona testing, which I don't know if you guys have experimented with, which is like you basically create like an elaborate like character, and you like make it really like overblown, a soap opera. You're like, this person is crazy and they do this and that, and then you like test based on that kind of character, which is sort of an interesting idea that we're playing with. But yeah, our manual testing, I'm really hoping the community can help here, because even like by far like our top executives are our best testers. So I mean, there are a few testers out there that are really gifted and are very highly celebrated as having that unique skill to, you know, that 6th bit in their brain that they can just, you know, find the issues, and those people are great, but they're very rare, and they don't scale. And so, you know, how do we make that testing happen given the people that we have and the staff that we have? So that's sort of an open question. And that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, just going back to the kind of manual testing and automation. So your generalist Scrum team does automation? Like they
Yes.
write the scripts, they enhance the framework?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay.
And they maintain it too.
They maintain it too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a fairly sizable amount of, you know, just test maintenance work that everyone does. And we're trying to cut that down. So we have this problem where we have so many tests now. We were so heavily invested in automation. We have so many tests that it's actually really hard to run them all against every change list. And so we batch them, just like, you know, mistake number 1. And so then we have to find, like, when something breaks, you know, we have to try and figure out, like, what change list broke it. And we have an automated process to do that, and it's not that accurate. And so it's just, you know, people get work sent back to them later, and they have to go back and, you know, fix it or understand it to assign it to another team. So that whole process is very cumbersome, and we're working on fixing that by changing our CI so that we can have like bursty activity and scale, so that we can run all the tests we need to run against every change list. And at the same time, we're trying to actually drastically reduce our automation. Yeah. Yeah. So we actually are trying to like remove tests that are no longer relevant and not that high value, and replace them with unit tests or API tests that are like much cheaper to run and can run much faster.
I didn't even think about it. The 2 guys on, are they still on?
Oh yeah, let me see.
Just see if they maybe had a
Yes, I think-
question or something.
Can you guys?
I was also thinking, I wonder, you know, one argument, so like when we do automation, we do a lot of automation for our clients.
Yeah.
And that's been a really large growing area of our business, just because it's one of those areas that having really specialized people who like know how to build robust frameworks
Yeah.
and write
Right.
robust code for that
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah.
And very helpful, and makes, you know, good ROI for your automation, right?
Yeah.
You know,
There's-
it is time consuming.
There's
So-
nothing worse than a badly designed like automated test framework or
Right,
test
right.
bed.
Right. So I mean, but good skilled developers or whatever, I mean, I guess would, if they're the ones that are building it, and, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can see how it could work, I guess.
Yeah. You guys have comments, David or Sam? You're unmuted.
Actually, I don't have any comments, but I wanted to thank you for the meeting.
Oh, sure.
Traffic is horrible in this
I had a feeling.
What?
He said traffic
Traffic's
was horrible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then manual testing team, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand, so you had, that's do you have manual testers on your Scrum team, or is it a separate group that does it?
So that's the dirty secret that we're basically, we need to solve that problem. So,
Yeah.
we kind of contracted out this group that we thought, we would be able to replace with real device automation. And that real device automation has just not happened as fast as we hoped it would or planned that it would. And so we still have it's basically like critical test plans that need to be tested on like a certain set of devices. This group can kind of execute those flows and just kind of hammer it out. But Salesforce has always been really, ever since I've known about the company, it's always been really anti-manual testing. So they're sort of like, we're just gonna hold this off. We're not gonna admit this is really happening. We're just gonna focus on automation, focus on automation. But in the meantime, the testing still needs to happen.
Right.
So I mean, ideally, we would be rolling out support for automation on real devices, and then pulling those people in and integrating them in. I think as normal Scrum team members that are doing this work.
Right.
That would be the ideal way that solution resolved itself, in my opinion. But yeah, do you guys have experience testing on mobile? Like, anyone have feedback or comments?
It's hard.
Yeah, mobile test, so we do that also, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, I'm sure, and what in the test more than I can is, with mobile testing, there's just so many different devices and things that you want to test on. There's different use cases, or I guess not use cases, but scenarios that you wouldn't really find on a desktop or whatever too, like
Absolutely.
text coming in so that you
Yeah.
want to simulate that. You want a text coming in, you want a low battery, you want an interruption test, you want whatever those things are. So
Yeah.
a lot more different types for manual testing, especially different types of test cases that you would write or scenarios that you would want to build
Yeah.
into it that are not necessarily on web desktop based type of
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah, like going offline or having a weak connection, low battery. Yeah, those are all things that definitely causes problems. And then I don't even really want to think about the layer of testing around security and trust and data. I just assume that the apps that run on my phone are not secure. I mean,
Right.
or just their memory leaks and the settings that you say as far as don't send my data back, may be respected, may not be. I just assume that whole layer of quality with mobile applications in general, not Salesforce, but just in general.
For
it's
others,
still,
not
for others.
Salesforce.
It's still pretty rough around the edges there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we really try not to do emulation or simulation for mobile devices if we can, but it's more costly, more time consuming and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We haven't figured a good solution to, I guess you have to plug in your automation to real devices, right?
Yeah.
Plug it into a device and run it that way, but.
Yeah, that's what people are doing. Do you guys have a solution for managing your devices that you are satisfied with?
What do you mean by that?
For an inventory system or a leasing or loaning, or does each QE person get their own? Or how
That's, we're still working on that. So, yeah, we have a lab, and right now, so with each client, we'll either have dedicated devices for that specific team, or they'll be able to share it with our big, larger lab.
Okay.
And the dedicated devices, that's pretty easy. It's the team, and they're just sitting there. You use whatever you want. The shared lab part is a little bit more difficult that we've been trying to figure out how to do that. Right now, it's been on a day-to-day basis, or first come, first serve every day, basically. we tried reserving them. We've tried.
Do you guys run out?
Well, yeah, some of the more popular ones, we got the iOS, or 6 comes out, iPhone 6 comes out, and we gotta
order a bunch
do all
of
this
them.
stuff and
Yeah.
order them all up, and it's like, everyone wants to test on it all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, like, there's times where there might not be a device available. So then we have to say, okay, can this client, or can we work with a similar device?
Mhm.
Similar size, screen size, similar, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then we'll do that if they're willing, but sometimes they have very strict requirements that
Yeah.
this is the device, this is our analytics, these are the devices, these are the 10 devices that the majority of our users are using, and this is what we have to test on. So then it's, okay, we can get you a dedicated device or for the future, but you know, at that point, it's, they have to wait. So
Yeah.
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, what's the time limit you can use a device for, how long, how do you rent it out?
Start a company like lending phones. That'd be a good idea.
So we,
We'll drop ship these.
I mean, you've probably heard of soft subs, right?
Yeah.
So that's one that we try out and are partnered with.
Oh, okay.
Device Anywhere is another one that
You've tried.
we've utilized, but yeah.
Yeah. Still an open question.
Yeah, I think it's still, we're still figuring it out,
Mhm.
so.
Cool, well, I guess, David, Sam, I guess I'm
I have a
gonna,
question.
oh yeah, mhm.
You hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Thank you again for your, letting me look in remotely. So, are you planning on having a role exploratory tester?
yes, absolutely. I mean, the people that are talent, that have that talent, we will hire and we will, you know, we will praise them and we will celebrate them. The issue is though that most people don't, right? Like I've met a few of them out there, they exist, but I don't know, that's a very like rare kind of skill. And usually those people also don't want to just be doing exploratory testing. They usually also want to be developing, you know, their programming skills and doing other stuff too. So yes, absolutely, that is extremely valuable, and we would absolutely hire them, and we'd probably nudge them and, you know, to try and become more of a generalist in that, kind of including in their toolbox the ability and, you know, time to do these other things, but, you know, also allow them to kind of play that strength too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Have you tried any, like, crowdsource testing like you said? Does that work for you guys?
That's interesting. I've been interested in that, and I think that I personally haven't been involved in any of those projects. I think it could work for some products. Another thing with testing that everyone knows is like one size doesn't fit all. Like one product can be tested in a certain way and another product is totally different. I had to learn that the hard way a few times at previous jobs. But yeah, like each business and each product like really needs its own strategy that's like well suited to, you know, what it needs and how it works. And crowdsourcing could work really well for some products and not well at all for others. Another thing that I was interested in, but I haven't really seen anyone pick up yet, is the Mechanical Turk service from Amazon.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool when they announced that, and that people would be, and in fact, I think there may be like a rainforest QA. Have you guys heard of them? I think they may use that. Yeah, so that could work. That could be really interesting. I would be interested in people working in that space. Just like someone like.
I'm not sure how mechanical turns would be different from like you said.
I mean, I think the idea is that you can formalize and specify the test plan a little bit more for Mechanical Turk, but you could do the same thing with U-Test. Yeah, you could do the same thing too. I guess it's just that you're going through this like programmatic interface with Mechanical Turk where you actually don't know the human on the other end. It's all through some API. Versus with U-Test, you're actually maybe working more closely with the human and have contact with them potentially. I don't know. It's probably about the same for all intents and purposes. But I don't know, do neither of them like offer a guarantee of like a particular phone model, right? or like phone operating system, it's just like whatever they happen to have available.
Well, no, I mean, with UTEP, because they have, literally hundreds of thousands of people, you can usually find somebody who's the right.
With the right model, okay, interesting.
Yeah, just because they have enormous number of tests.
Yeah, you can specify your requirements.
What do you test?
You can also figure out like their geography. So for example, if you want to test different regions, different network providers, different cell phone companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can pick and choose and get a good representative sample of like real people. So,
Have you used them?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we're my wife and I actually, we do the testing for them just because it's fun. So we just finished the thing for American Express.
Oh. Do they pay well? Side gig.
Actually, this one actually paid really well. It was like they give you $100 spend and they give you $200 when you're done with it. You just have to buy 10 things and report how it works.
Oh, easy money.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. It was more fun. It wasn't about the money.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
kind of fun.
yeah.
Going to different stores and it's like the mobile payment space.
Yeah.
Everybody's really crazy about it, so they want really good tests. Pretty good.
Yeah. I can't wait for my phone to be my wallet, my keys, and my like everything else. Yeah. That's gonna be awesome.
Here, let me clone your RFID then.
Yeah, and then when you lost it, you have lost everything at once.
Yeah.
Version.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's okay, we'll just implant it into your eye next
Oh,
time.
great.
Right,
Wonderful. Somehow they find a way to get it. You know, the worst part. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I like U-Test and I like the Mechanical Turk because it's like you're working with people that are seeing the problem with fresh eyes, right? Versus like the same, the same people doing the same task. So that can be good, but I think there are some, like, potentially some issues with like, security and proprietary software that might limit what we can do with that. But. Cool.
So I just one more comment. I keep hearing about how difficult it is to find exploratory testers, and at the same time I keep hearing about people who have master's degrees who can't get work and they're like serving lattes at Starbucks, right? There's something that we're not doing right about finding people who like really smart and capable, but have no idea that this work exists, right? And they can be trained, they have the intellectual capacity. We just don't know how to reach it. I don't know how to solve this problem, but it's been on my mind for a couple of years.
Weren't you saying earlier to me, like, I would make a fantastic recruiter?
Yeah. Recruiting is one of my secret skills. I'm like really good at it for some weird reason. I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, it's more than just being smart and capable and detail-oriented and hardworking. It's like, I mean, those are all great things, and you can do a good job testing with those, with someone with those qualities, absolutely. But there's the outliers, like the people that are just truly gifted and have this like sixth sense, and they're just like completely not even on the same scale as like most people with that particular skill. And they can just go in and, find a really subtle like security bug that would have been devastating if it had gotten out, and no one ever thought to think of and no one looked at it, and and they just go in and sort of see it. Those people I think are rare because it's sort of like it's like a native genius or like a kind of, innate kind of ability. And those are the people that really stand out with testing. And then I think the like good testing is something that everyone can do, with discipline and training and motivation. And honestly, everyone should do if they're working within the software development world. And honestly, everyone does do, because how can you even write a piece of software if you don't actually test it at least once or twice, you know, bare minimum to see that it works. So, you know, in that sense, I think everyone involved with software development is already doing testing and, you know, are testers, and we should sort of embrace that more and realize that that's the case more, rather than thinking that only certain people can do it, or, you know, that we have specialists that are doing it, or, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, and I'd say exploratory testing, you know, I've heard different people define it differently too. Like if you're just saying, hey, go on a device and start plugging away and just exploring it and trying to find bugs that way, that's one thing. But if you're talking about someone who can really look at this and application and say, okay, where's the edge case? Where could this be broken at? How do I get there? You know, and really be able to do that is a totally different skill set. Like in fact, people who are very well educated, for example, with like master's degrees and stuff, they have to really align, you know, they have to be, you know, from a personality standpoint and from a skill set, they're really invested in more orderly, right? And that they're great for like, hey, this is the test plan, this is the, you know, this is the order and the process we're following. But those people who think out of the box and who can really find those edge cases are oftentimes may not do well in school, for example. So I think it just depends on how you define exploratory testing.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think anyone really knows the answer. These are all just like guesses, you know. That's another problem with testing is like, we don't have any real like the data is pretty limited as far as what we have. Like how, is the software like really high quality? Yeah, probably. Is it low quality? Yeah, I mean, you know, when something's like really broken, but you know, how much testing should you do to get how much quality? Like it's all, a lot of it's like guesswork, and we only have a couple of metrics that we can use, and so that's another challenge. It's like trying to understand, you know, when have you done enough testing? You know, do you need to do more testing? Did you not do enough? Like all these questions are really hard to know for sure. You can sort of have a gut feeling about it, but you guys actually probably have more experience with like wrangling the numbers to see.
Oh, yeah. To the benefit of the QA people, of course.
Or like just to kind of, you know, suggest to the customer, like this is how much testing you should do, or, you know.
Oh yeah, no, that's actually, because we work with clients who will ship a product with 1,000 bugs in it, right? And we have clients like who's a currency trading platform for a large bank who will not ship a product with any bugs. You know, because it's not a slap on the wrist. It's like go to jail or I'm going to lose $1 million in this transaction. You know, so there's different
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the risk. There's different clients.
I was talking to someone who works at SpaceX, and it was crazy, like, to talk to this guy about how they do testing there, because it's not anything like any world I've ever experienced, like doing web development. Like he's like, yeah, we have our automated tests, and that's just the beginning. Like those are all those things have to pass 100%. That's just like the entry point. And then after that, we have to look through those data files, the log files that, you know, were written out for days, and analyze them and look for anomalies. And then after that, we do like, you know, like physical testing with like actual, you know, materials testing. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, what are you focused on? He's like, well, I'm focused on the rocket launching phase. Like,
You don't want that to blow up on something.
that's not my thing. Build websites.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, from our when we're doing the work on our plans, it's all about communicating risk, right?
Right. You're like,
And
oh.
we don't make the business decision, but we tell you where the risk is at. You know, this is the coverage you get. This is the, you know, this is the bugs we found. This is what could be left. This is what we didn't cover. This, you know what I mean? And you really have to be clear on that, obviously. But
Cool. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys.
thank you.
Fun
Thank you.
talking to you.
Of course.
Bye, David. Bye, Sam.